What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. I am Jonathan Crane. I'm a mediocre Cat 2 cyclist out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And I'm Ben Edwards, a former elite mountain biker, head coach at Skyway Cycling, and team director at Skyway, presented by Domestique Coffee. There's a lot. A lot happened over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, we're back into the thick of it now. I feel like, we like personally can't do more than once every 2 weeks, but we're getting to that point where like we might have to go weekly for a minute or something because there is
Yeah, it's
so much stuff going on. I'm gonna start with the fact that we both like have done and are doing some racing, and like there's some connections there. But I did some racing last week. Time is like so compressed. It was like a week ago today. Me and our teammate Zach went up to Nashville for the Music City Crit, which is their like weekly weeknight crit at the racetrack up there. Um, that crit is whoop, just went way full screen with that. How's that?
there we go.
This is my footage from that crit. That thing has gotten like just out of control strong though. I'm gonna have a breakdown from that race, but it ended up being a tune-up for guys that were going to go on to podium a bunch of the races we were talking about. So this was just like the weeknight crit in Nashville, but we had Johnny Brown from Miami Blazers in my race. Mason Schofield from Cliff Bar has a new team name this year. They're called Cliff Family Drifters, but it's Drifters is Cliff Bar.
Okay,
I,
word.
I don't know if they're not if they're like sponsored by Cliff Family is throwing me off. Like I don't know if that means like the family that owns Cliff Bar is just personally sponsoring them, not the brand Cliff Bar. I don't know.
I'll have to do some research on that. It seems
Yeah,
like the Music City crits are turning into like a mini driveway. Like
yeah,
the level at those is crazy high.
yeah. And we also had Jeremiah Stoller, who we've talked about on this channel a good bit, and it was it was a weeknight crit, and it was also the fastest race I've done this season. I think we averaged 29 for a solid hour.
That's
Um,
quick.
a lot of that with Johnny Brown. There was like a solid 20 minutes where I just sat fourth wheel with just Johnny Brown and Jeremiah Stoller just trading turns on the front, and we were just holding a solid 29. Like no one, you could attack, you could maybe get 20 yards up the road for a minute or two, but so I knew those guys were going really really well. Again, I'll have like a full breakdown of that footage on this YouTube channel if you're watching the YouTube, which you are right now. We're live this week. What's up, everybody? But yeah, the takeaway from that was like, man, Johnny Brown. I mean, of course, he's the youngest. I think this is something I figured out or like came upon the other day. He was the youngest ever elite road champion back in 2018 when he was on Action. He was 21 then.
He also won on aluminum rim brakes that year.
Yeah, yeah,
Actually
he
was
was on
on
a
VLA.
yeah, he was. I didn't know him, but I just was pulling for him. I was watching that race and I was pulling for him just because he was the guy on the LA.
Yeah,
Um,
same. Literally same.
yeah, that was an awesome victory on his part. So that takes me straight to one of the big races that happened over the weekend was the really the Quad Cities, which is like four races that center around Snake Alley. Snake Alley Crit is like I think both of the races that happened this weekend, Snake Alley and Tour of Somerville, are like this thing where they're like prestigious and they've been going on a long time and everybody wants to win them, but they still have this kind of like grassroots feel. Like neither of them has a live stream. Luckily, we know people who are at them, and we have some YouTube videos to go off of and stuff. So we've been able to kind of like put the pieces together of what was going on at those races. But yeah, so two of the guys that actually Mason was there too. So three of the guys I was just talking about were at the race in Snake Alley, and all they did all four, I believe, of the weekend there. So yeah, I think five between Johnny Brown and Jeremiah Stoller. I believe five podiums between the two of them in 4 days.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's really strong. But Jeremiah we knew because he had won a Speed Week race by taking the gambler frame and holding it. So
Yeah, we talked about him as like the revelation of Speed Week, but
yeah,
he's continuing to take that farther and farther. Interesting thing I learned about him. So talking about like people we know, our friend William is on that team and did those races with him. Also did Joe Martin, which we'll get to in a minute. But apparently Stoller is very religious and does not race on Sundays. So if you look at a lot of these uh, like weekend multi-race series, he will not be in the Sunday race of those. But really, it kind of like plays into his advantage that none of these things are like the two series we're talking about right now, Snake Alley and Somerville. I don't think either of them have like an omnium or an overall, so it kind of is fine to be like, I'm just gonna get in there and do my best on the individual days rather than racing for the overall.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And like I think it pans out well for them because they're able to just go all in on that one result instead of trying to like save energy and like not do as much work. And I think that style really suits them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It also suits a Texas Roadhouse, which we've talked about a lot this season. Texas Roadhouse is either there's William. We're watching the video we're watching right now is from Michael Lambert. Shout out. All the videos we're looking at, I have put in the description on the YouTube and on the podcast. So if you want to see what we're talking about or you want to go watch the full things, go check them out below. But Lambert actually got ninth. He's a guy that I've done many battles with in Alabama cyclocross. He lives up in the north. I don't know what you even call that now, like the heartland.
Yeah, I guess so. Like that weird area between the Northeast and Midwest. I guess it's
Yeah,
the
but he was
heartland.
down here at University of Alabama, and that's where he got strong. So he was an Alabama cyclist for several years. So it's awesome to see him in the top 10 at Snake Alley. I think he won the Cat 2 race a couple of years ago. So he's graduated to the big boys here, and that's the footage we're looking at. And I watched this through to kind of put this race together. I never realized this course how far back you can see in the top right of what we're looking at the course map. The snake. So the snake is a cobblestone or like brick paved climb that weaves up the hill like Lombard Street in San Francisco, kind of. And that's like the definitive feature. That's what you always see. I never realized how far away from the snake this course goes or how long the downhill on the backside is.
This course is almost like a kermesse because it's a 3.5 minute lap. So like the the snake feature, like when you're watching like highlights of it, it seems like everything is very close together, like Tulsa style, like one or two blocks. But this is a really, really big course, and it's actually more dynamic than just the snake because there's some chicanes there, like just coming up before the snake too. So
Yeah,
it's it's a really, really cool dynamic course that's more than just like the key feature, which I really like. It
yeah.
makes it really interesting.
I really want to go do this. I wish they still had a Category 2-3 race here. But I started to set this up a minute ago and then got sidetracked by seeing William, who's in the frame again that we're looking at on the right there. I think William had pretty good results over the course of this weekend.
He got 10th at Snake at this race, right? Or was it
No,
10th
no,
at
no. That was another.
yeah,
That
that was
was what I
another
was
one.
going to get
Disregard.
to. Yeah,
Disregard.
there were four crits this weekend. There was Friday Snake Alley, Saturday is actual Snake Alley, and then there was Quick Trip and one
Melon
more.
City.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that final one was won by oh, why can I not think of his name? Drew
Drew
Dillman.
Dillman. Drew
He
Dillman.
won this race last year. He won Snake Alley last year, and it's funny that came up both because like we've talked about Texas Roadhouse a lot on this podcast and how they're like kind of coming into their own this year a little bit, or they've at least like found their rhythm in terms of they really roll the dice every time, and they're either like winning the race or they're not there at all, but they're definitely shooting their shots and having some successes. But also over the weekend, we were on a group ride and we were talking about how good Dillman's videos are from cyclocross. And someone on the group ride was like, "Yeah, Drew Dillman's kind of like fallen off this year." And I was like, "I don't know, man. I think
No,
he's still pretty good." And then I think like probably as we were having that discussion, he was winning the race. I think he's done a lot of work this year to set up Fergus Arthur on their team, who's had
yeah.
some good success.
I also like I was listening to some stuff from him, and he was saying that he had like Athens Twilight was his first intensity work of the year.
Wow. So he's
So
like
like
riding into it.
yeah, he's like really riding into the year. So the falling off thing, I don't think so. I think he's just playing it smart with Cross later in the year, and I think he's, just he's gonna get a lot stronger
Yeah, he's
over the
on a
course of the
way
year.
different calendar than a lot of the other guys for sure because
Yeah,
he does like cyclocross is really his biggest thing. He does cross at a super high level. If you haven't watched his videos, definitely check them out. Cliff Bar, good to see them with like a little bit more of a squad. Mason was very strong at the Music City race. Basically, once a break got away with Johnny Brown and Jeremiah Stoller in it at that race, everybody looked to Mason to do the work because he's the other guy on like an ACC team, and
yeah,
which was kind of frustrating to him. But I could also tell that he was very strong. I think he was top 10 here as well. But yeah, the big story for me was that the podium from my Wednesday night race, two of those guys got podiums. I believe there were. I said it already, five podiums between the two of them, but Jeremiah got 2 seconds. Johnny Brown got a win. They just were absolutely ripping. I think that's
yeah,
the story.
yeah. Say Johnny Brown was on the podium at Mellon City and Quick Star, and he won one. So Johnny Brown was like pretty much the MVP of the weekend, I would say.
Yeah, 3 for 4 on podiums. I mean, former national champion, and he was also like racing basically without a team here. I didn't see any other Blazers riders in the mix.
Yeah, I think some of the other Blazers were at Tour of Somerville.
It's exactly what I was about to say. Is I think the reason that we didn't see him here is that most of his team was at the other big race over the weekend, big race series really. So that's the Quad Cities. I would love to go do that, although they don't have a Cat 2-3 race anymore, so I would have to race the big boys. So
It's a big thumbs down.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. That might be one of those races where I go do that and just like finishing on the lead lap would be a win for me.
Right.
Um, I couldn't find a lot of Tour of Somerville. I will say, shout out Cycling News has some good write ups
Hmm.
from a lot of the races we're talking about. And Tour of Somerville, there was a good breakdown on their website, and also talking to some riders and putting it together from various, YouTube videos, Instagrams. This is a video from Ride for Life. This is the best video I could find of the Pro 1-2 race here. But Somerville looked, Snake is kind of a cult classic. Somerville, what the fields were even bigger. So Snake was like, I think they were like 60, 70 starters. This was like 120-person field. This was like a
I'm
maxed out ACC field.
There's 147 people that I'm
Ooh,
looking at on
there
here. So
there should not have
yeah,
been 147. I'm going to say that's too many. I think you should honestly, I think most fields should max at 100. Like
yeah,
you're already probably in like clown car territory if you're in the back half of that. Like you're not really racing, you're just kind of like riding until someone 50 wheels ahead of you if you're in the back of that race like lets a gap go.
yeah. Actually, I may be wrong. Disregard. There's
It
85. I was looking at the bib numbers. There's 85 people.
okay.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
it was
My bad.
definitely big fields. Is that 85 finishers or 85 starters?
It's 85 finishers.
Yeah, so I think the field did max out, which is like 100 or 120.
Yeah,
Uh,
that tracks based off of who's showing up and not scored. But
yeah,
yeah,
which is pretty. That's a lot
it's
of dudes.
it's huge. That's almost bigger than Twilight as far as like a race entries.
Yeah. So the story of this one, Automatic was there with a full squad. It seemed like they really wanted to win. They were pulling things back. It was very. This was like a big, kind of the way that Sunny King or Athens Twilight is for us guys from the southeast. I think if you're from the northeast, like Tour of Somerville, if you're from like Massachusetts, Philadelphia area, Tour of Somerville is kind of like one of the big local-ish ones that has a lot of prestige that you want to show out for. So it seems like there were a lot of riders on the more like local elite teams that were trying to animate things, trying to get up the road. Adam Meyerson was there apparently, who like, former crit legend, crit pro, still races a lot of masters racing.
Yep.
Um, but it seems like Automatic was there really trying to shut everything down as much as possible throughout the race. There was a crash and a reset with 4 to go, which I don't know if that like affected things, but yeah, there's apparently a big crash with it seems crazy to have a restart within 5 to go, but also you don't want to crash that close to the finish to like cause field splits that go to the very end.
Right. That's such a weird thing because I hate to say it, but when you neutralize a race, like people use that as a way to move up. Like it's
Yeah.
never really truly neutral, and so like there's definitely like always a reshuffle, and like that it's going to affect the race no matter what when they do that. And I don't know. There's not really a good solution to it. Like I think you just
Yeah, it sucks either
it
way.
happens.
Basically, I just don't want to see a crash in the
Right.
finale. Just don't
I
want to
don't
see
want to see crash at
crashes.
all. Like
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things where at 5 to go, there's not a good solution there.
Yeah, for sure. There was a break. They reset the break. Automatic pulled it back as they had been doing kind of the whole night. And once it came back together, though, Blazers, who the rest of Johnny Brown's team, seems like Blazers really had their A squad minus Johnny out at this race. Spencer Movenzada, maybe the first we've seen of him this season, and he kind of took it over from Automatic as soon as the break was caught, and Blazers just went full lead out mode and took Danny Estevez to the line. He got the sprint. A guy I don't know, Cesar Marte from West Orange, Road Kings Racing Team, got second.
Yeah.
So shout out. That's one of those like local elite team kind of showing out guys. Big result from him, and then Noah Granigan from Denver Disruptors in third. Disruptors has been slowly and steadily coming on. Thomas Gibbons from Automatic came up sixth. Again, don't have like clear footage of that sprint to see exactly what happened, but it sounds like Automatic they're getting it together. They're trying their tactics out. They're learning how long they can take the front four. Seems like this was a pretty messy finish with the restart and everything.
Yeah, there's kind of an asterisk there with like what actually like how things panned out and like what strategies would have worked versus what ended up working because of that restart a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, Also, like I think Automatic probably could have got Gibbons on the podium had they not spent so many matches, clawing things back the whole time.
right.
But that's also
Yeah, I mean, maybe
who
it was
knows,
their responsibility if nobody else wanted
right?
it. I mean,
Right.
if Blazers was sending people up the road and a lot of these smaller teams were, it could have just been that Automatic was like the biggest team that wanted a field sprint the most. So, at that point, it's
Yeah.
kind of up to them to some degree.
Yeah, for sure. I will say one thing that kind of stuck out to me as well as in the top five, a guy from DCC, which is like a weird, like it's very, very small, like
Yeah.
semi-elite team. Like they have a
Yes.
lot of like ones and twos that are always like one and twoing every race, it seems like.
Yeah. Some of those guys were in our races, like at Twilight and at one of those guys took a really hard rip toward the end of Sunny King in the 2 race that I did.
Yep.
So yeah, they were getting up there, showing out. I don't know where that team is based out of, but
I think Florida.
wow, that's
I
that's
think.
a that's a haul to get up to Somerville. But
No kidding. Well, this guy's from New Jersey
okay,
or New York. So I think maybe they're kind of spread out, but I think the home base for the team is Florida.
nice. Yeah, it might be one of those where like they don't really have. It's like Velo Brew at this point. It's like I don't think there's a. They've got
Right.
riders kind of all over the place. I don't think there's a real concentration anywhere. They just sort of come together for these bigger races. They're not really a local team, local to any place.
Yeah, that's probably about what DCC is, but I just thought them in the top five was pretty cool.
Yeah. So those were the two big ones the previous weekend. going back a week, since we're on this 2 week schedule, we got to talk about Joe Martin. And
Yeah,
I want to start by saying one of our predictions was kind of right. Um,
it was
we
definitely right.
Yeah, we had predicted that back, I think
Yeah.
episode 1, we were talking about Superman Lopez potentially being involved in American criteriums this year, and we were right that we did see Superman Lopez racing a crit in America. We were wrong about which one. It's not an NCL crit. We have seen Superman Lopez in the Experience Fayetteville crit of the Joe Martin stage race, but the race kind of came down to that crit. I don't want
Hmm.
to get ahead of myself telling the story of that one, but
Yeah, no, it definitely kind of came down to the crit there, the road race. Like, I like the Joe Martin courses, but the one thing the Joe Martin courses don't do is create like a whole lot of separation. Like, there'll be groups of like 10, 15, 20 on the road, but when it comes to the real race leaders, they kind of end up in a sprint with each other during the road races, and the time trial is the separator. And we're having some guys that are just in America that are finally like on that level to compete with like Superman Lopez up a climb, and the gaps weren't that big on the TT, and it really came down to the crit, and they were sprinting. They were sprinting for bonus seconds in the crit,
yeah.
like for like bonus premiums. Like that's how close it was.
So starting from the top, Tyler Stites from Project Echelon won stage 1. He had a small group with him. It looks like there were 8 guys with him, including Kyle Murphy and Eddie Frere from Legion. Kyle Murphy, those of you that don't know, I've been following Kyle Murphy like from the beginning, probably since he was like a fixed gear crit guy. He like came into the sport through that, which was kind of like where I came from, and then he like went from that to the track, and from that to rally, which became human powered health. Maybe a couple teams in between there, but he's just stepped from human powered health to Legion. So another like huge weapon, like underrated guy, a guy who I guess we haven't seen talked about a lot because human powered health does so much racing overseas, but not world tour level racing, that just like
Yeah,
falls in that gap that doesn't get covered. I feel like we've mentioned that before, but yeah, Kyle Murphy, a new name to look out for on Legion.
yeah, for sure. Like I think a lot of those red hook guys were just so good, and they were just doing red hooks, and now that's kind of gone away. We're starting to see like how competitive those like fixie races were.
Yeah, it was like a talent ID thing. Like
Oh yeah.
it created so much like buzz and got so many people racing, and became this like international circuit
Hmm.
that, yeah, definitely like found some talent that like wasn't getting in the normal channels, wasn't getting in the like U23
I
whatever.
mean, the specialized Rocket Espresso team was unbelievably stacked, and like people forget Justin Williams was involved with that, and like that's sort of where he started. He was in Europe doing the European thing and came back and did Red Hook. So like it was really a talent ID. Like a lot of the main crit stars we see now were the stars of Red Hook 5 6 years ago.
Right. So speaking of Murphy, stage 3 of the of Joe Martin, Murphy is third on the uphill time trial, which is pretty gnarly.
Yeah, yeah,
24 seconds down on Miguel Angel Lopez. Beat Sergio Haynow. Beat Sam Boardman from Legion, who won that big uphill time trial last year, kind of a shock uphill time trial winner. Beat Tyler Stites from Project Echelon. So Echelon was in the leader's jersey until stage 3. Lopez put enough time in on that one. Only 9 seconds to Riley Sheehan, but then 24, around 30 seconds to all of the Project Echelon guys. So that put Lopez in the leader's jersey, which they talked about it on the Slow Ride podcast. The leader's jersey for Joe Martin is pretty awesome. It looks cool. Look
it
up what it
does.
looks like. Uh, but yeah, insane to have Superman Lopez in the leader's jersey going into a crit in America, crit on the last stage, and there were multiple bonus seconds available at intermediate sprints. So Denver Disruptors, who we talked about, we kind of tipped them as like they're built like a stage race team, so maybe this is a good one for them. They really got it done. They as
Yeah.
a team did the work to get uh get Riley to the front and get him the points. There were 19 or not points, seconds. There were 19 seconds on offer throughout the course of this race and he literally mopped up every single one.
Yeah. Yeah. Say Riley Sheehan is like the MVP. Like he's been on him and Noah Granigan are really the two stars on that team. Like from a result standpoint, I feel like. But yeah, Riley Sheehan, amazing work from the team to be able to get him those seconds and then deliver him to the win that secured the GC for him.
So Riley is a guy that I have been hearing about from William coming from the junior ranks for a long time. He was on the Lux program and then he was on a Volo. He's been
Okay.
in that like junior U23 world and I feel like this is sort of his like he's risen to that level and he's showing he can hang with the best of them. But I've been hearing how crazy his numbers were from some of those junior and U23 guys that have been having to race against him for a long time. So yeah, I think Disruptors has a secret weapon there. Maybe not a secret anymore after he's won Joe Martin,
Yeah,
but
they're not a secret anymore, but they picked him up when he was a secret. So
yeah,
I imagine that the teams will be looking for him once that
yeah.
contract is up.
There was a little bit of craziness in this finale where Lopez got a flat within the last 5 laps, and I don't know if the officials gave him the time of the group or it's the write up I saw just said that the officials had to review the results or review the rules for what happens when a rider gets a flat. It was maybe even a flat like on the final lap.
Hmm.
Um, so Lopez, regardless, I don't think that's why Sheehan won though. Like looking at the
Yeah.
situation, Sheehan had sprinted for every single time bonus, gotten all of them, and while Lopez is a great rider, he's like, an uphill guy. I think Riley maybe had the advantage in the crit, just like being an American. I'm not saying he's stronger. I'm just saying he's like raced more crits and he's on a team that has a lot more guys that have raced a lot more crits.
Yeah.
That that Medellin Colombia team, they came and did they brought Oscar Sevilla, several like, world tour level or coming down from world tour whatever guys and did Speed Week 21 or 22 and kind of got smacked around. I mean, I think they maybe like won one of the smaller races, but it's certainly a different beast to some degree. And Sheehan won the sprint for the points. He won at the line, which gave him the bonus seconds that took the overall. So I don't think
Yeah.
head to head that even without the flat, I'm not sure Lopez would have taken it from him. I think that's well earned regardless by
Yeah, for
Sheehan.
sure. For like crits, like it's even if you have experience racing narrow roads and kermesses in Europe, like crit racing is a very unique skill set that unless you are very, very, very talented and naturally gifted at them, take a lot of time and practice to do. And so for Medellin to come into Joe Martin and like try to defend in the crits, like kind of a tall ask because they don't really do a lot of crits.
It is interesting. I wanted to talk about this, just thinking about. Oh, before I get away from it, the footage we're looking at on the YouTube show right now is from Alan Schroeder from CS Velo, also on Criterium Nation podcast. Go, he's got a good breakdown on his channel. That's what we're looking at here. Again, all the links are down there. Just wanted to shout that out. But yeah, it's interesting on a stage race like this that they would put the crit last. It seems like to me and a lot of them do this. Like the crit is on the Sunday of the weekend stage races. In my mind, it's like put the crit first
Yeah.
because it kind of takes the air out of it. Like this was the rare exception where the crit at the end, like the gap in GC was um small enough so that the bonus seconds mattered and like yeah, it's so rare that the race is close enough that the crit
Matters.
is competitive in the GC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think maybe the perspective is, well, we'll do like a Champs-Élysées thing, and like it'll be a sprint day, and the race should be decided by the crit, and it's more spectator friendly. But a Friday night crit is so much more fun than a Sunday afternoon crit.
That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah,
Champs Elysees is so different. It like you've had 20 stages to work all that stuff out.
right.
You know, when it's only a 4 or 5 stage race and the last one is the crit, it kind of takes the air out of it. But yeah, like a
Great.
Friday night crit in a downtown, like I guarantee downtown Fayetteville is more bumping on a Friday night naturally, like has more people, more energy on the Friday night. I can actually say that for sure. I've been in Fayetteville on a Friday and on a Sunday. There are more people downtown on Friday, and you
Yeah,
could capture a little bit more of that like natural energy on the Friday night. And then, if someone wants to like lap the field in the crit, that could make the GC really interesting because then you get a leader who has like a big time gap potentially going into a stage that like maybe then doesn't suit them, and someone's got to not just win the big Devil's Den road stage, but like get back that whatever 2 minutes that someone got in the crit. Like
right.
it just sets up for more interesting racing, I think.
And it's just a good kickoff. Like you think about like the off-road series mountain bike, like Whiskey Off-Road that they were doing. Like they kick off on Friday with like a crit for the mountain bike, and it creates an atmosphere, it creates interest. I think like a Friday afternoon, Friday evening crit just is a good setup, like a good kickoff for a stage race, and then that way you have a leader who might be more crit focused. Maybe his team is okay. We're going to pass leader somebody else on the team, or now you have a crit guy like trying to race uphill to defend that jersey. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it's more interesting time storylines. Yeah,
Exactly. I think that makes for a much more interesting race. I've also got to say, shout out First Internet Bank. We're looking at a rider from First Internet. No big results from them in either of these races, but in all of the YouTube like perspective videos I've been watching from the races we've been talking about today, and also at Sunny King, they've been really active. They just haven't been able to put it together at the end, and I think they're good, but this is one of those things where like the level has raised around them, you know.
yeah, yeah. Like they were pretty active at Sunny King. Like yeah, it's one of those things where the level they were here, the level was here, they were here, and then they just went like this,
Yeah,
right?
they
Like
got better, but also
everyone
all,
else
all
got
of the
better.
like sub Legion level teams have leveled up this year. It's awesome to see these races where we're finally getting, and we still haven't had like the full showdown yet. I think we're gonna maybe get it at Tulsa, but like these races where we're seeing the NCL teams, the like, Disruptors won Joe Martin, maybe the biggest, most prestigious like stage race in America right now. I guess it's debatable whether it's this or Redlands or Valley of the Sun, but or Gila maybe, but those are really the only ones in contention, I would say. But yeah, like
Yeah,
Disruptors, brand new team, crit based team, NCL team, winning the big stage race.
yeah. And everyone, before the season kicking off, they were saying the NCL teams weren't going to be good. They weren't strong, and we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the NCL teams dominate a lot of the races that are non NCL races.
Yeah, I mean, Legion had a strong squad here and didn't get any stage wins and didn't get an overall win. I think this may be the year where the narrative is like Legion is more on a level playing field with everybody.
Yeah,
I
for
could be,
sure.
I guess that brings me to something I definitely wanted to talk about, which is Tulsa predictions. Like we're moving into Tulsa weekend coming up, and I guess that's the next big one, and that's the one where I think maybe we're gonna finally see everybody in one place at one time. The NCL teams, the Legion teams, Butcher Box, Automatic, Texas Roadhouse.
I don't
Um,
know if Automatic's doing it
they
because
may not be.
some of the guys on Automatic were talking about selling their entries.
I
So I
saw one
don't.
guy saying that. I think
Yeah,
maybe just David can't make it, but
maybe. Well, another guy said they were selling it because they wanted to go to a different race with their teammates. So I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
I could be mistaken. I've been known to be mistaken in the past, but I think that's the case. Sorry, my dog is acting up.
No worries. It's a live show, people.
Um, but I think I'm really sorry.
No
But
worries.
I think that I've been mistaken in the past, but I don't know if we'll see automatic, but I think we will see Legion, Miami, both Miamis,
Yeah.
American Cycling, um, Aviators, Denver Disruptor. Like we'll see a lot of the A level talent.
Yeah, so you just mentioned American Cycling. That was the big team that kind of took the weekend off. They did not have anyone at either Somerville or really any of the races we're talking about today.
Yeah,
They didn't have a squad at Joe Martin that I saw. Didn't have anyone at Somerville. Didn't have anyone at the Quad Cities Snake Alley race. So yeah, I guess my thought there is that they're probably like resetting and really targeting Tulsa, which I think Legion is too. I think that's maybe the first race where Legion like really has it, underlined on their calendar. That was sort of their coming out party. The first year that they like took over everything was the post first Tulsa post COVID was kind of when they
yeah.
like
They
really
they
dominated.
swept all of they swept the whole weekend, right? Or did they
Yeah.
miss one? Okay.
No, I think they swept the whole weekend.
Okay. And I mean, I think my perspective on American cycling not doing Joe Martin, Somerville, or the Iowa Quad Cities thing is that I think it pretty much solidifies them as being 100% all in on ACC so much that they may not be doing non ACC races that are national level.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Um,
which which makes sense for them. Like with Summerhill, Hernandez, like a lot of their guys are pretty much squarely like historically been crit specific guys, and ACC being the premier crit series. I think it makes sense for them to fully commit and like put all of their eggs in that basket and not worry about some of the peripheral stuff.
yeah, because I mean we've talked about it. There are just like so many races this year. Like we
Yeah.
are at peak crit. There are as many crits as there can possibly be. I think probably more, even with the advent of all these new teams, which is awesome. Like there are more crits that are trying to be on a national level, and I think we're seeing a little bit of a like push and pull between the historic events that riders want to do well at. I get the sense that like Snake Alley and Somerville this past weekend, there are more teams that care about it more elite riders that care about those races more than some of the new stuff that is big or some of the things on other national calendars.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good transition into one of the things we wanted to talk about, which is the Justin Williams, the Crit League.
Yeah.
Justin was on Payson McKelvin's podcast. I
Yes.
guess they're teammates. They're Red Bull teammates.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
They're Red Bull
a
Saints.
really broad team.
They're definitely they're friends to say the least. Yeah, so Payson got Justin on basically in the wake of the C.R.I.T announcement. Just wanted some clarification, and Justin was pretty open on that. Really let some laundry air out, let a lot of details air out.
He said a lot for sure.
Which Justin Williams, like for all he said, he's still pretty well spoken, and was not as inflammatory as he could have been, but definitely said some
But
stuff that was shocking.
he was not as inflammatory as he could have been, but also more inflammatory than most cyclists would have been, you know?
Right,
I
right. He
found
was
myself
throwing that line.
this is like they talked about a lot of stuff. They talked about NCL, they talked about that guy who said that Justin stole his idea with C.R.I.T.
Yeah,
They talked about they talked about in sort of like they talked around the like NorCal cycling, that whole controversy.
yeah,
And I found myself, they also just talked about like Justin's vision for like where American racing is going. And I feel like most people either like fully love or fully hate Justin, but I have this like every 5 minutes I was either like, hell yeah, this is awesome. What he's saying rules. And then the next 5 minutes I'd be like, ugh, totally disagree with this. This is
Yeah.
like, and I'll give some examples. Like
Okay.
something I totally agree with. Um, like he was talking a lot about creating opportunities in America, how American cycling doesn't have to be like the Tour de France. It can be a different, its own thing. We need to stop like making this one-to-one comparison. Like he said many times, he doesn't want to go race in Europe. That is not the goal. Um, they're trying to raise the level. That all stuff that like I totally agree with. But then, getting into the NorCal thing, and it's obvious why I would think this, but he was like basically saying that if you're not a pro cyclist, you can't talk about cycling. So sorry, everybody watching this, we're not allowed to do this because
Right.
I've only raced 10 years and have a communications degree, but I'm not allowed to talk about cycling on the internet since I haven't won a pro race.
Yeah, there was that kind of stuff, and he said some things that I did like, where he took a lot of inspiration from F1 as far as like rider access and like as far as like access to teams and which closed like the courses being similar and like trying to build up a crit weekend
He said a lot.
an F1 weekend,
Yeah, there
which
was
I
a
like.
lot in there about NCL that I thought made sense too. Like,
Hmm.
it was kind of unclear to me up to this point, like, other than just him wanting to own it, like, what was the difference between what NCL is trying to do and what he is trying to do?
Yep.
And it seems like what NCL, the real big key difference that they get to is that NCL is, like I said, they're trying to scale it like a tech company where the goal is to get to a certain valuation and then you sell and get out. And that's like kind of how that's like how tech companies are built and how they scale, and like that's the comparison I keep making.
Yep.
And Justin doesn't want to build something to sell. He wants to build something to maintain it and continue to push it over time.
Yep.
Um that F1 aspect, even within that discussion, there were parts of that where I was like, totally agree with this rocks, and then parts where I was like, completely disagree. And I think the main like delineation I find is that like everything he was talking about like creating storylines that are bigger than just like the action that's happening on the track. They made a really good point about how like F1, if there is no storyline around it, if there's no drive to survive, there's no like analysis of all the tech, if there's no all that stuff that surrounds the racing is what makes it interesting. If you just tell someone like they don't know any of the drivers' names, you tell them nothing outside the race and just turn a F1 race on, it is like fundamentally boring.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to like watch cars go around the track, and it sorts out pretty quickly, and then you don't have the drama of understanding like the tire changes when they're pitting, the gear fatigue, like who the fights are outside of that. Like maybe the same guys in first, but there's a good battle going on farther back. Like if you don't know any of that stuff around it, I definitely think there's a lot of that that can be brought to cycling. The part of it that I don't like is I think F1 like in terms of sponsorship and cost, and like it's like one of the least sustainable sports. And I don't mean that even from like a green perspective. I mean like it just takes an insane amount of money. Like it's you almost have to be, like an oil oligarch to even begin to be like in the realm of participating in it.
Yeah.
And I think trying to like raise our production value to that level is part of the reason that like stage racing in America doesn't work. So it's like, I think part of the opportunity with modern technology and even like what we're doing with this show is like you can provide a better product now that doesn't have to be as cost intensive.
Well, my interpretation of him making the F1 comparison was making it like as he was talking about the experience, like
Yeah.
I went to the F1 Miami and I did this and there was this and I was able to go here and making a likeness to a crit where okay, well there's a VIP area and you can create this experience and it can be a whole weekend around the crit and maybe not match that production value because if you know anything about F1 budgets, we're talking hundreds of millions of
Yeah.
dollars per rider
That's what I'm
per
saying.
driver, right? So like
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be at that level, but I think his vision was we can make a crit weekend like a Tulsa, which is already like towing the line of like being a full, immersive experience of a weekend
Hmm.
and like really building it out and you know, creating things around the weekend to make it more immersive and to help create those storylines
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that's where he was more going with and not necessarily big production value, super expensive,
There was a
all
part
that.
where he was getting very excited about like how crazy the logistics are, like of them like flying all that stuff around and like bringing these huge teams of people and stuff. And like,
Yeah,
it's just hard for me to imagine a world in which we're gonna pull that much more sponsorship into cycling that's like gonna sustain that long term. And even if you can, at some point, you run the risk of like, one Oleg Tinkoff type guy just decides he's done, and like half of your you know
yeah,
it wipes out a big swath of the competition. And also, there's like a level of I think this is something that comes through. This was like an undercurrent I was hearing through that whole podcast, which is that like uh, Justin doesn't really like or I don't know. He didn't come through the like participatory system of American cycling, so he like sort of doesn't care about that as much, which is I mean that's where you and I race is like the
right.
we're in those, local 1, 2, 3 races and, you know, 2, 3 race that happens before the pros at your Sunny Kings, your ACC events, and it seems like he wants to clip a lot of that out. And like to me, and this is again because this is my experience of the sport, so this is like him as a guy who never did any of that. Like he, was a junior, like came was racing at a very high level at a very young age.
Yeah.
He kind of sees that stuff as like we don't have to do all that, which like Lions Den had no amateur racing.
Hmm. Which maybe like maybe his vision of that is have the local amateur races, right? Like have that, and then
Hmm.
your big national level races, like the big ones,
Yeah.
are pro only, and like you kind of got to earn your way into those. That was my take from it, which I also disagree with. Like I think you take the amateur races out of Athens, and you have 50% of the people there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That
Um,
is what, and I guess like we're looking at it as it is now, and he's saying he wants to make it different from that, but I think that's a lot of what makes it cool now. Like he was talking about walking around the F1 paddock and being like, "Oh, it's so cool that I can do this." But I mean, for me, it's cool to like go race the Athens course that the pros are racing. Do
yeah,
the race. I think that's true for a lot of people. I think especially when you get to like the Masters and stuff, like a lot of the guys are making the trip to those big races because they're saying like I'm gonna go do the Masters race and I'm gonna race up Snake Alley. Like I'm gonna do that insane climb that the pros do. I'm gonna get like
yep.
I'm gonna do it myself and then I'm gonna get on the hill and watch them do it twice as fast.
Well, that's the gravel draw. Is I
Yeah.
get to line up next to Ian Boswell, right? Like so that's the gravel
Yeah,
draw
but do
too. So
you?
that's
Because I
you know
we've talked about peak
yeah,
gravel. I think we're at peak gravel and gravel is gonna level
yeah.
off this year.
No,
But like
I'm with you.
with the professionalization of gravel, and I didn't want to talk about Unbound, but I guess we have to.
Right. Sorry, I was comparing the I was agreeing with you using that as an example.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm gonna get into it though. But
Okay.
like with Unbound this weekend and the continuing professionalization of gravel, like years ago, I mean, I've lined up at gravel races with Van de Velde, Hincapie, Lance, current pros, Dillman. This was all one race. Everyone I just named
Yeah.
uh,
Southern
finished
Cross.
1 minute behind Dillman. But like that was years ago where there was only one start line, but as like more pros come into gravel racing and it becomes not just like a retirement plan for ex World Tour guys, but like some people that is what they're aspiring to and that is their career now.
Yeah.
And those guys are really racing. Now you've got like the pro pin and the pros have their own start time and then like pro rules. Like at Unbound this weekend, there are pro only like only the pros are barred from using aero bars. So you're going to continue to see this separation, like out of necessity, of the pros and the guys who are really like competitive from your like 50 plus masters. And I think the days where you're just some rando who's starting next to Lawrence Tindam on the start line, I think those days are numbered, at least at the big gravel races. So
I agree.
I don't know that the novelty may wear off there or just become the same as like you could
Well,
go to an ACC race and have the exact same amount of like access and I did the
right.
same course and all that as you would.
Right. I guess like maybe perspective of it is for Justin, like if you go to a mountain bike World Cup, there's not amateur race 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then World Cup. It's here is the World Cup. So I think his idea of it is we can elevate the professional race by like making it a pro event. I think that's where he's saying, which again, like in cycling, like amateur participation drives attendance. It's what keeps the lights on for a lot of these races.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, you know, he's missing because he was not ever at a participatory level. I think maybe he's missing. He doesn't realize how big a piece of the pie that is.
Yeah. I also think that he has this vision cuz like going back to the F1 thing and this is part of the like F1
Yeah.
comparison. Like most people who watch F1 don't race cars.
Right.
So he's trying to figure out like how do we crack the code on like making bike racing a thing. And he did have like I think a pretty smart point. He was like a lot of people ride Pelotons and do spin bikes and are generally into fitness, but they don't follow bike racing. So like how can we convert some of those people? Um but I guess and maybe that is a part of it. Maybe that's what the crit series is. Maybe I'm looking at it in a way of like, what if C.R.I.T is all there is? I mean, we could be in a world in a couple of years where like there are a couple major circuits in America, and one of them is C.R.I.T and the other is ACC or some version of like NRC style, like
Yeah.
the stage races band together and have a thing. Um, I don't know. It could be that there is some of both, and that like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's weird to think about. A couple of things he was mentioning about C.R.I.T trying to appeal to those non-cycling endemic folks is he did confirm that C.R.I.T was going to be points races, but he's not using the NCL format of points allocated every lap.
Yeah,
You kind of
it's
mentioned like points would be like on a quarterly basis in the race or like every handful of laps or
yeah,
like it would be that sort of format, which I think is better than points every lap. He did confirm that they were shooting for a fall 2023 launch, but he said they're not rushing it and it could be 2024.
yeah,
So we could see C.R.I.T this year in late September, early October, but it's most likely going to be 2024 when those races launch.
yeah. I agree. I think it would be it would definitely be rushing it to get it on the calendar this year, especially given how much other stuff is going on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've talked about it on this channel that I think that the the tempo race track format where you do points on every lap. I think I would rather see like a points race format where there are sprints throughout the race, but there are less of them, so they each matter a little bit more.
Yeah.
Although the NCL race that we had was interesting. We'll see how the rest of them play out as more teams figure out. It may change. It may become more interesting. It may become less interesting.
I will say that like with the NCL teams figuring it out, like every like Mike Spike's team or Texas Roadhouse or Supra, like they all said, okay, we've got to change our strategy. Like they've all been like, okay,
Yeah.
like we've got to figure this out. We're going to change it.
Yep.
So I think we will see in the next few like a complete shift in how the race is raced.
Yeah, speaking of NorCal, he put out a really good video. Some of his teammates, like that guy Jeff Linder,
Yeah.
was not at NCL Miami, but his team was, and they were running GoPros, and they did a good breakdown, which was really the first one I've seen from inside the race. Um,
Yep.
and it, like, having watched the stream coverage and then seeing inside it was interesting, but they, much like we thought when we were breaking it down, like they didn't fully have their head around how the substitutions were going to work until after the race. And then once they saw other teams fielding like four, so they had two subs in the pit and like doing different tactics, like have someone go for the sprint and sub them out immediately and almost like trade laps off.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think that's just going to get more and more interesting over time.
Yeah. I think like, people were complaining about it being too boring or not dynamic enough. And I think it's only going to get more dynamic and interesting for the next three.
I
Um,
agree. And like I had fun watching it.
yeah.
They were talking about being confused by it or whatever, and it's like I don't know. I think it's for a normal person, it's as confusing as a race where you're watching and the guy in front is not the guy winning.
Right.
The
And I think it'd be less confusing if there was like a last lap win kind of thing, and then okay, here's points, but like last lap rider gets recognition. Like
yeah,
that
yeah.
would make it overall less confusing for everybody.
I
But
think
I think
the
people can
last
wrap
lap
their
definitely
head
needs to be
around.
more heavily weighted though.
I agree. But I think people like Payson and Justin are looking at it from a cyclist perspective, which if you're looking at it solely from this is bike racing, the format's super confusing. But I
Yeah.
think if you're looking at it from someone who doesn't watch bike racing, doesn't care about bike racing, doesn't know how any of it works, they can wrap their head around, oh, they're scoring points. These are the
Right.
points. Got it. Good.
Yeah, it's
So,
exactly like I mean, it's like gaming, like any
yep.
video game, you're scoring points throughout the course of the game and whoever has the most points wins.
Right.
I think that's pretty easy for people to follow, especially like with the way they were displaying the points kind of on screen the whole time, that it made it possible to follow.
Right. Yeah. So I think they were watching it. Okay. I think a lot of people are watching NCL from a perspective, um, an overall negative perspective. They're looking for holes. They're looking for ways to dislike it, and so
Yeah.
they're like repeating a lot of the same narratives of like the five or six huge flaws they have.
Right.
Where it's like overall, like yes, there's these flaws, but overall, is it overall a positive experience or not? And I
Yeah.
would say overall positive experience.
Yeah, I think I said after I would call it like a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. Like, fun to watch for sure.
Yep.
I'll definitely be watching the rest of them. I think it probably hurts us and this show that we don't have a really hard take one way or the other, that we're not
Right.
going like NCL is the best and all the stuff they're saying is true. They are changing racing forever and it's all totally different. And we're also not like NCL sucks and it's stupid and everything they're doing is bad. But like this is the
Maybe.
this is the thing. I hope what people are coming to this channel for is like nuanced actual discussion and not just
Yeah.
like clickbait, whatever.
Right. I think it probably overall helps us that we have an overall agnostic view of like everything, and we give, this is what happened, and we
I'm
analyze it
trying
and
to just
go on.
analyze on good faith. I think that's like
Right.
what we're trying to do here, and also like recognize nuance. Like
Right.
even within the like Justin like interview we're talking about, like everyone contains multitudes. Like
Yep.
there are parts of it I agree with and parts of it I disagree with, which hopefully hopefully Justin doesn't see this. And I feel like there's in the internet era, like it's impossible to recognize nuance, and if you make any criticism of anything, people take it as a full attack, unless you are just like fully on board and
Right.
stan at
Yeah.
something completely
Right.
with
Right.
no criticism. Those are like your only two options. So
I don't know. I think like Justin said a lot, and I think you know I think it's only fair that you can agree. Like if you fully agree with everything somebody says and find zero fault, like that's a personal problem within you, right? Like
yeah,
I think
you're
everyone says stuff and you're like, that was not the right thing to say or whatever. So
right.
we're all human, but
Yeah,
I mean,
so
hopefully
let
there
us know what
people
you
recognize
disagree
the
with
flaw.
from
Yeah,
this show.
like go ahead in the comments and like air us out, please.
Yeah, yeah.
But
If you agree with everything we've said, you have an uncritical mind.
right, so we got sidetracked. We were talking about Tulsa predictions, and I don't
Yeah,
think
I
we
was gonna
have
say
full Tulsa
let's yeah,
predictions.
yeah, let's close it out with like to get into really like clickbait spicy territory.
Yeah,
Do you think Legion wins Tulsa? Let's
no.
just I don't either. I think okay, I think maybe they win one day. I think they probably win either Blue Dome or Arts District, but I don't
Yep.
think they win Crybaby Hill. And I also think they win either Blue Dome or Arts District. I don't think they win both.
I agree with that take. They definitely don't win Crybaby Hill. Like that's the course they're least suited to. Um, I think if I have a feeling they win Arts District and Miami Blazers wins Blue Dome. So my
Mm.
prediction is Blazers Blue Dome, Legion Arts District, and Disruptors Crybaby Hill.
To bring it all the way back around to the top of the show, I think we never said it, but Cade Bickmore talked about him a ton. Project Echelon.
Yep.
We saw him win Sunny King with our own two eyes by the skin of his teeth. Um, he won Snake Alley. I'm gonna say that Project Echelon wins Crybaby Hill,
Okay.
and maybe even Cade Bickmore from Project. I'm gonna say like Cade Bickmore or Tyler Stites from Project Echelon wins
That's a
Crybaby
good
Hill.
that's a good take. Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it there. Everybody, let us know all the stuff we were wrong about, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, if not before. Oh, look out for all the videos. I'm gonna have a video from me racing with Johnny Brown, Jeremiah Stoller, Mason Schofield, right before all of those guys did top 10 at Snake Alley. Got that in the works. I've got a really in-depth Athens video where I've got my footage and one of the guys who got on the podium doing some compare and contrast. But yeah, be on the lookout. We will be racing. Some of our guys are going to be stage racing this weekend. If
Yep.
anybody's going to be out in, where is that race? Tennessee?
It's Carter County, Tennessee, so Elizabethton, Johnson City, Kingsport area.
It's the last race with climbing. It's the last road race with climbing in the South. So
Right.
everybody get out there so it doesn't just go away.
It's a seven. It might be the biggest summit finish in the country. It's 7.5 miles.
Yeah, it's gnarly. And a lot of the guys we've talked about, Will from Nashville Local is going to be there.
Even
We've got
Bassett from
Alex
here,
and
Howard
Rob.
Hall. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got Alex, Rob, Elliot in the one, two. I guess it's Pro 1-2, and then we've got a whole squad of guys in the Cat 3. But yeah, we'll be doing some racing. See you guys out there. We'll be watching Tulsa. Maybe I'll watch Tulsa live. Maybe we'll do it live on the channel. At least one of the races.
There we go.
That could be fun.